Imagine coming off a season where you had the most passing yards in the entire NFL, but no team wanted to sign you. Picture making the Pro Bowl your rookie year, but being a third-string QB just a few seasons later. I've dissected every season of Jameis Winston's career to uncover what really happened to the QB. Along the way, I discovered something crucial to his decline that no one has really talked about. Let's uncover the truth behind the rise and fall of Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston grew up in a small Alabama town called Bessemer. By the time he was a senior in high school, Jameis was both a top football and baseball recruit. He was ranked as the #1 quarterback in the class of 2012 and received offers from many top Power 5 schools, like Auburn, Florida, and his hometown Alabama. However, Jameis decided to leave his home state and committed to FSU, where he would play both baseball and football. His first year at the school, Winston decided to redshirt since there was no way he was beating out senior and future first-round pick EJ Manuel for the starting spot. However, entering the 2013 season, after Manuel left for the draft, Winston was named FSU's starting quarterback. In his first ever college start, Jameis was nearly perfect, completing 92% of his passes for 356 yards, 5 total touchdowns, and no interceptions. This perfect play continued throughout the season. Literally. FSU finished the year with a 14-0 record and went on to win the national championship game versus Auburn. In that one, Winston led his team on an 18-point comeback and threw the game-winning touchdown with just 13 seconds left. Jameis finished his freshman season by completing 66% of his passes for 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. After putting up these insane numbers, Winston became the youngest player ever to win the Heisman Trophy at just 19 years old. Winston and the Seminoles started the 2014 season 2-0, but in week 3, Jameis wasn't allowed to play due to a suspension. Why was he suspended? Well, the QB went into the school's student union, stood on a table, and yelled "F her right" in the P word, but obviously he actually said the real words. So yeah, that was like a meme going on around that time, but how did Jameis think that no one would notice he was the one doing it? Like, he was literally the face of the best college football team in the nation at the time. I mean, students immediately took to Twitter to share what they just saw him do. As a result, Jameis was suspended for the team's week 3 matchup with Clemson. However, before the game, Winston ran out onto the field in full uniform and started warming up. Then head coach Jimbo Fisher notices and starts yelling at Jameis while looking all stressed out. I mean, look at his face here. He just looks done. Despite the suspension, FSU finished the season 13-0 again and were heading back to the national championship game. But this time around, FSU got destroyed by Marcus Mariota and the Oregon Ducks, losing 59-20. It was the first loss of Jameis's college career, and he struggled turning the ball over multiple times. Winston's second season under center wasn't as strong as his first. His numbers went down in basically every category. He finished the 2014 season with a 65% completion percentage, 3,900 yards, 25 touchdowns, and most alarmingly, 18 interceptions. In spite of this, Winston chose to forego his final 2 seasons of college eligibility and declared for the 2015 NFL Draft. During the pre-draft process, Jameis and the quarterback that just beat him in the national championship game, Marcus Mariota, were projected to be the top 2 picks, with Winston going first overall. When draft day did finally arrive, Jameis Winston was indeed selected first overall by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Heading into the regular season, the rookie was named the team's starting quarterback, and in the first game of the year, he was set to face off with the #2 overall pick, Marcus Mariota. In that one, Jameis's very first NFL pass was intercepted and returned for a pick 6. Winston continued to struggle as the game went on, completing just 48% of his passes for 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. The Bucs lost 42-14, and Winston was severely outplayed by Mariota, who threw 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. As the season progressed, Jameis's play slowly improved. His best game of the season came in Week 11 versus the Eagles, when he threw for 246 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no turnovers, which tied the Buccaneers' record for the most touchdowns in a single game. Winston finished his rookie year by completing 58% of his passes for 4,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. He set the Bucs franchise record for the most passing yards and touchdowns by a rookie and became the 4th rookie in NFL history to throw for over 4,000 yards. The QB came in second for the Rookie of the Year award behind Todd Gurley and was named a Pro Bowler after Tom Brady opted opted not to participate late in the season. The following season, Jameis's play continued to get better. In a Week 1 matchup with the Falcons, Winston completed 71% of his passes for 281 yards and 4 touchdowns, which earned him the NFC Offensive Player of the Week award. Despite the Bucs having one of the worst run games in the NFL and a lackluster group of receivers, the QB led the team to an improved record of 9-7, which marked the franchise's first winning season since 2010. Winston finished the 2016 season by completing 60% of his passes for 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 18 interceptions. He broke the Buccaneers franchise record for both passing yards and touchdowns in a single season and became the first player in NFL history to pass for over 4,000 yards in each of his first 2 seasons. His numbers were improving in all areas except for one: turnovers. On top of his 18 interceptions, Jameis also had 6 lost fumbles that season. His turnover numbers were now trending in an alarming direction. However, it seemed that if his coaches could get his interceptions under control, he could be a very good starting QB in the league. He was still just 22 years old. There was hope. It was just this one big thing that needed to be cleaned up. Entering the 2017 season, Winston was touted as a dark horse to win the MVP award, and there were expectations that this Bucs team could make a playoff run. However, once the season started, Jameis continued to make head-scratching decisions and committing what I like to call "what are you doing" turnovers. It was weird though, because week to week, Winston would look like a totally different player. In a game versus the Bills, he looked like one of the best QBs in the league, completing 72% of his passes for 384 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. But then literally just 1 week later, he completed only 55% of his passes for 210 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 3 turnovers. Despite his up and down play, we did get the infamous "let's eat a W" pregame speech during this season.
Let's go. That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W. How many people want to eat a W tonight?
I mean, just look at his teammates' faces. They're like, what? They have no idea how to react. Look at Chris Godwin's face. Jameis is not real. After taking multiple hits to his throwing shoulder throughout the season, Winston re-aggravated his AC sprain in a Week 9 matchup versus the Saints. He was ruled out of the game, but still made an impact from the sideline, poking Saints corner Marshawn Lattimore in the back of the helmet, which sparked a fight. I know it's not okay and he shouldn't have done it, but I just find it so funny. It was so immature and childish the way he did it. Like when you're a kid trying to annoy your sibling and get under their skin, that's the way he did that. Following that matchup, Winston was sidelined for the team's next 3 games due to his shoulder injury. Interestingly enough, the doctor he saw for this injury was Dr. James Andrews, and if you saw my RG3 video, you know about Dr. James Andrews. You already know his lore. It's very interesting. Once Winston returned to the field in Week 13, the team lost 5 straight games, after winning just 2 of their last 3 with Ryan Fitzpatrick under center. The Bucs finished the season with a disappointing 5-11 record. In the 13 games Jameis played, he completed 63% of his passes for 3,500 yards, 19 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and 7 lost fumbles. 1 more than the previous season, even though he played in 3 less games. Heading into 2018, there were more questions than ever surrounding Jameis Winston. Throughout his first 3 seasons in the league, the QB struggled to read defenses, made poor decisions, and didn't throw the ball accurately. To make matters even worse, Winston was suspended for the first 3 games of the 2018 season after an alleged incident with a female Uber driver. So Ryan Fitzpatrick started the season as the Buccaneers quarterback, which resulted in a Fitzmagic run. Tampa started the season 2-1 with Fitzpatrick under center. In those 3 games, he completed 70% of his passes, averaged 410 yards per game, and threw 11 touchdowns. Fitzpatrick was playing so well that when Winston returned from his suspension in Week 4, he kept the starting job. However, that didn't last long. After going down 38-3 in a Week 4 matchup with the Bears, Winston replaced Fitzpatrick at halftime. Jameis went on to start the next 3 games, but in Week 8, after throwing 4 interceptions in 3 quarters, he was benched in favor of Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick remained the starter till he threw 3 interceptions in the first half of a Week 11 game. Winston then took over in the second half of that one and remained the team starter for the rest of the season. Jameis finished the year by passing for 2,900 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions in the 11 games he played. There was simply no improvement in his game since his rookie season. The same mistakes were happening over and over again. And even though he was just 24 years old, no one knew for sure if he would be back as the Bucs starter in 2019. Many were already calling him a bust. After the team went 5-11 in 2018 for the second consecutive season, head coach Dirk Cutter was fired. To replace him, the Bucs got Bruce Arians to come out of retirement and take over the team. This seemed like a great hire for Jameis, as Arians had already helped revive another quarterback's career in Carson Palmer. Tampa decided to stick with Jameis as their starter heading into the 2019 season, and oh my, did that season perfectly sum up his career. On one play, he would look like the best quarterback in the league, but on the next, he would look worse than the worst backup in the league. Worse than Nathan Peterman. Sorry, no offense, Nathan Peterman. The season started off rough for Winston and the Bucs. In the first game of the year, the QB completed just 55% of his passes for 194 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions in a loss versus the 49ers. But the following week, Jameis played much better and had a turnover-free game in a win versus the Panthers. In week 3, Winston passed for 380 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. The following game, he was even more impressive, completing 68% of his passes for 385 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception in a win versus the Rams. In weeks 2 through 5, Jameis was averaging 294 yards per game and threw 11 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. However, just when it seemed like Winston was playing the best football of his career, he reverted back to his old turnover-prone self. In week 6, he completed just 55% of his passes for 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions, and 1 fumble. After throwing just 2 interceptions in the previous 4 games, Jameis threw 13 across the next 5. Heading into week 12, the Bucs held a 3-7 record, but then the team went on a 4-game win streak, which brought their record back up to 500 at 7-7. During that 4-game stretch, Winston averaged 373 yards per game and threw 11 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, so it looked like he might be back on another hot streak. After throwing for 456 yards in week 14 and 458 yards in week 15, Jameis became the first player in NFL history to have consecutive games with over 450 passing yards. With just 2 games remaining in the regular season, Winston looked like he was on track to earning another year with the Bucs. Except Jameis yet again inexplicably reverted to dark side Jameis. Not good at football side Jameis. In the team's week 16 matchup with the Texans, Winston's first 2 completions were actually to the other team. Yeah, his first and third pass attempts were both interceptions. Then, with 1:30 left, the Bucs had the ball down 3 and were trying to win or tie the game. But this is when Winston decided it was the perfect time to throw his 4th interception of the game. Outside the turnovers, Jameis was just missing wide open receivers in this one. It wasn't pretty. Just like he had his whole career, in the team's final game of the season, Winston made some insane throws as well as some terrible ones. But on the first play of overtime, Jameis threw a pick 6 that lost the Bucs the game. With that OT interception, Winston became the first player in NFL history to throw 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions in the same season. After that game, head coach Bruce Arians said of his QB, there was, quote, so much good, so much outright terrible. Winston finished the 2019 season by completing 60% of his passes for 5,100 yards, which was the most in the league that season, 33 touchdowns and 30 interceptions, and became just the 8th player in NFL history to throw for over 5,000 yards in a single season. When Tom Brady became available as a free agent, the Bucs opted to sign him and let Jameis walk. No team was interested in signing Winston as a starter, so he joined the Saints on a 1-year deal to be a 3rd-string quarterback behind Drew Brees and Taysom Hill. It's crazy to think that the quarterback that led the league in passing yards couldn't find a team to start on the following season. After Drew Brees' retirement at the conclusion of the 2020 season, Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston battled for the starting spot. Jameis won the job and was named the team starter entering 2021. Things got off to a great start for Winston in New Orleans. In week 1, he completed 70% of his passes for 148 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. Throughout the first 6 games of the season, Jameis had 1,100 passing yards, 13 touchdowns and just 3 interceptions. The Saints were 4-2 during this stretch too. But then, in week 8, it all came crashing down for Jameis. During a horse collar tackle by his former teammate Devin White, Winston planted his foot and his knee turned an awkward way as he fell to the ground. The injury turned out to be an ACL tear, which would sideline Winston for the rest of the season. A absolutely heartbreaking turn of events, considering he seemed to be playing some of the cleanest football of his career. In 2022, Jameis returned as the Saints starter and was yet again viewed as a dark horse MVP candidate. Winston opened the season with a strong performance versus the Falcons, completing 67% of his passes for 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no turnovers. However, in that game, Jameis took a hit that created 4 separate fractures in his back. He didn't allow this to sideline him though. Jameis played the next 2 games, although not well, probably because of the fractures, and was then finally ruled out for the team's week 4 and 5 games. But when Winston was finally cleared to play again, he was left on the bench. Andy Dalton had now taken over as the team's full-time starter. The Saints were averaging nearly 30 points per game with Dalton under center, as opposed to 17 with Winston. I don't find this to be a totally fair comparison though, because Winston only got to start 3 games that season, and 2 of them he started with multiple fractures in his back. I understand rolling with the guy who's getting you wins, but New Orleans finished the season with a 7-10 record. It wasn't like they were on some crazy win streak or anything. I truly feel like Jameis should have gotten another chance to start. Winston re-signed with the Saints in 2023, but the team also brought in Derek Carr, who ended up winning the starting job. After not starting a single game in 2023, the Saints let Jameis walk in free agency. In March, the QB signed a 1-year deal with the Browns to back up Deshaun Watson. Who knows, maybe Winston will get another shot in Cleveland. Deshaun Watson has been anything but a consistent starter for the Browns, and maybe Jameis gets a moment like Joe Flacco had last year. Something I think had a really negative impact on Jameis's career that no one seems to talk about is the timing of when he hit free agency. Winston became a free agent after the 2019 season, so basically the winter of 2020. The 2020 draft class was loaded at the quarterback position. Joe Burrow went first overall, Tua was off the board next, then Justin Herbert, after him Jordan Love, and Jalen Hurts was selected in the 2nd round. Any team that was in serious need of a quarterback had the option of drafting one. After the draft, there just weren't many QB needy teams. If that 2020 class was, let's say, the 2019 class, with Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones being the only 2 quarterbacks that went in round 1, I think Jameis would have been able to sign with a team as their starter, because more teams would have been looking for a quarterback since there weren't that many in the draft. Yes, I understand that if Jameis was an actual franchise quarterback, it wouldn't matter which QBs were in the draft class. Teams would have wanted to sign him. But the thing is, when a quarterback is looking for a second chance, most teams would rather draft a young rookie quarterback instead. Obviously, Winston eventually did get his chance to be a starter again, but injuries ruined it for him. Sometimes timing is everything in the NFL. I mentioned Robert Griffin III earlier in this video, and if you want to know what truly led to his downfall, it wasn't just the injuries, by the way, check out this video up here.